Welcome, my name is Ad Emmen. I'm reporting live for Primeur Magazine for the Digital Infrastructures Conference in Krakow. And we're here with Sarah Jones from the Digital Curation Centre in Edinburgh. So welcome.
Thank you.
So can you tell a little bit about yourself and about the centre?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sarah Jones. My background originally was in physical archives, working with the collections at the University of Glasgow and the National Health Board Archive. And then I got into digital curation through an archive master's course, and I've worked on various projects, but for the last kind of 8 years I've been with the Digital Curation Centre. And we deal specifically with research data management in the UK higher education sector. Mm-hmm. So we're helping universities to support researchers. We're working largely with the intermediaries, with library and IT and research offices within universities to build capacity and skills within those institutions.
And what kind of digital data are you then working with?
It's all types of research data. So whatever's important really for evidencing the research findings that are published by that institution. So, you're going from audiovisual material, all of your spreadsheets, you've got big data in some cases. Actually, it's interesting when people are working with big data, there's usually the European infrastructure or infrastructure at a much higher level. So they're not as reliant on the university services. So I think it's important to coordinate across those different levels of provision.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of things do you exactly do? I mean, if I am a researcher and I collect data from instruments and I collect some data which I have on paper and things like that, do I just then give them to you or what?
Okay, yeah, so the DCC itself doesn't run a repository service. We don't store data and curate it. Our role is kind of as a national coordination and advisory body. So the actual storage will be either within the institution or through services like UDAT. And what we do, we kind of support the best practices. So a practical thing for an individual researcher is often writing a data management plan. In the UK, there are a number of funder requirements, and often as part of a grant application, a researcher will have to write a DMP. And we have a service called DMP Online that helps researchers to write that data management plan. And that's really a process of reflection to think about what data they're going to create, what standards they should use, how they're going to store the data so they can collaborate with their partners in other institutions, and then what happens in the long term about publishing the data, making sure it's fair, that others can find that data and it's interoperable and reusable. So the data management plan is really a way for researchers to reflect on that, and then through all of the different infrastructure providers, they can get the actual support and services to manage the data.
And the data management plan is obligatory for UK grants?
So for the majority of the funders, RC UK, our research councils, most of them have specific requirements at an application stage, or they encourage plans to be written as part of the overall project.
In Horizon 2020, in the European programme, there's also now in a number of programs that you need to have a data management plan. So is it something that they looked at the UK and thought, well, we should use that?
I guess so. I think they were aware of UK policy, and the UK has been doing a lot of work on research data management for several years now, same with the Netherlands, and I think other countries have looked at those models and picked up on them. So in terms of the European Commission, they have their open data pilot, which initially started with, it was a few work areas that were part of the pilot, and that's expanded each year. The new work programs come out, and from 2017 it will be open data by default, so all areas need to consider being part of the pilot. Now, that's not to say that all data need to be made open, because not all data can be, but everybody needs to think about open data and what they can do within their individual project. And I think it's a really good development, and what I particularly like about the Commission's policy in terms of the data management plan is the fact that it's a deliverable, that it's something that's part of the project and gets updated as a kind of living document throughout that research project.
So typically when people start writing a project proposal, they think, oh yeah, we have to have a deliverable out about the data management plan. Should they then first contact you or a similar organization, or should they?
So there are a number of infrastructure providers in the European context. Two of those, OpenAir and EUDAT, the DCC is a member of. Yeah. So we support them on the data management planning aspects and some training in general on research data management. So they'll recommend tools like DMP Online. Researchers can use that. We've actually, because it's an open source project that we run there, some different countries have taken the code and run and host national instances. So you may find other versions of DMP Online, like DMP Tuli in the Finnish case. So there may well be a local tool that can be used, but otherwise people can use the main instance of DMP Online. And you'll find that there are guidelines provided by different organisations within individual countries as well, like DANS in the Netherlands. They provide a lot of support on data management in general, and again through OpenAir and EUDAT there's guidelines and support on data management planning.
You mentioned EUDAT and OpenAir, so they're two, let's say, big infrastructures or big infrastructure projects which are co-organizing this event here in Krakow. Yeah. How important is collaborating with these type of projects and these type of infrastructures for you?
I think it's critical. I think the issues around managing data, curating it in the long term, making sure others can reuse the data, those issues are global. We're not facing different challenges in the UK as opposed to other countries. So I think the more that the different projects and infrastructure providers come together, the better, really. And actually one thing we found through the DCC is that the RDA is a really good vehicle for doing that. So there were some initiatives we'd started in the UK. The DCC, for instance, started creating a metadata standards registry. We had a catalogue on our own website, and we'd started to kind of record different metadata standards in different disciplines. And that's something that we were able to take to a group at RDA that was interested in metadata standards and get more community input on it. So that's now an RDA output. It's something we're actually embedding into the DMP Online tool as well, so that we can help researchers identify relevant standards, and so we can also capture the standards in a machine-readable form that can then be fed out to other services. So I think collaborating across and sharing outputs and reusing each other's outputs is really critical.
This morning there was a presentation on e-infrastructures in Australia, and they said, our researchers don't really do anything about data storage or preserving data after a project has finished because there's no incentive to do them. Yeah, so
I think it can be very difficult, and I think we really need to focus on the rewards and recognition, because at the moment, particularly in the UK context, we have a lot of policies. There's a really strong requirements landscape, but there really aren't the benefits to balance that. And sometimes data don't get reused. So if researchers are being forced to share their data and they just see them lying in repositories not getting used, and they put a lot of time and investment into documenting that data to share it, it does lead people to question, what's the value of this? Why are we doing it? So I think you really need to see the reuse of data, that needs to be incentivized, but you also need to see recognition for researchers for good practice. It needs to become part of promotion criteria. It needs to be recognized on grant applications. Somebody says, I'm not just recording my publications, here's a data output. They need to get recognition for that in the same, possibly in a greater scale than a publication, because a data set can be a much more all-encompassing output.
Thank you very much for this interview.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. For Primeur Magazine, this was Adam Rico.